What's up, guys? Welcome back to Blood, Sweat, and Gear. I'm Scott McNally, and of course, I'm here with Skip Hill and S2H. This program is brought to you by True Nutrition. You can use our code ADVICES for some additional savings. We'll get to more about True Nutrition a little later. What is up, gentlemen? Skip's just finishing his food. I imagine this is his post-training Sunday night window for him. I'm guessing. I don't know exactly. But
haven't trained yet.
Haven't trained yet. So it's 7:00 at night. I never can keep up with your hours. I never know what you're doing. I never know what your plans are. You always have a reason though.
Mm-hmm.
What's the deal right now? Why are you? What's the deal? Why are you training later?
I don't want to throw anybody under the bus that's helping me with my training right now. So I'll just say that the schedule sometimes changes as to when it's good for me to be in the gym and when it's, I guess when it's less likely that there will be any issues. And I try to help them out to not put them in a bad situation for my training. So I just go along with, what's best. So today, what would be best is that I didn't train in the middle of the day.
Yeah, that makes sense. Scott, what's going on with you, man?
Not much. Same old. Things are starting to come back a little bit to normal.
That's good.
So, yeah, nothing too exciting. We've been working out this week though, getting yoked.
I heard you're getting back into it. Somebody told me you might want to talk to me about some nutrition or something, which tells me if you're thinking that means you must be getting serious.
That somebody must be me.
I think what it says doesn't know nutrition, so he's got to go to somebody else. I think that's clearly what it says.
Clearly, I didn't call you, Skip.
That is a very good point. Hey, listen, when I said that, I finished saying it. I thought, this motherfucker's going to nail me right here. Why?
Just maybe need a little accountability. Everybody needs accountability sometimes.
Yeah.
I've been hitting my home ghetto band workouts and a lot of stretching. Well, I tell you what, this sitting around more than normal, it didn't help with the physique,
Yeah.
My couch had a dip in it about a foot. Now it has a dip in the middle about 2 feet from my ass going down in it. So yeah, I'm swole, dude. I made some creative ass shit up with some bands. I had them wrapped around my back, under my arms, doing like tricep extensions like this and everything. It actually worked pretty good until they snapped. Oh,
there must have been some bad bands then.
No, it's my superior studliness that ripped them apart. Now, they were kind of old, but I was figuring out all kinds of goofy shit. My wife comes in and laughs at me because I'm about as flexible as concrete, dude. She's like, is that as far as you can stretch? I'm like, she tried to get me to do this thing called, what was it called? Like a rabbit stretch or something? Like you put one leg sitting down, one in front of you at a 45-degree angle, one at a 45 in the back, and you go forward and you go flat on your chest. Shit, I'm like 2 feet off the ground.
And then you suck your own dick? Was that part of it too? Did you leave that out? I bet you did.
I can't hear him. What did he say?
But
anyway, yeah, it was I'm not very flexible. So I'm working on my flexibility too.
Right on. Well, we have a bunch of stuff today. We've got a bunch of questions. We've got some topics. And guys, anybody who's watching, I'll say this throughout the show, but, throw up some questions, on the live feed, throw up some topic ideas, anything you guys want to hear about, anything you think would be interesting for conversation on the show, definitely let us know. To start us out, Skip, I read, now I'll be totally honest, man. I asked you to send me that article and I only glanced at it, but you had some information, an article, and then you talked to your client who actually is a doctor, a for real legit doctor, not just a bro on a podcast like us that had read an article. But what's the deal? First of all, this is related to COVID-19 and younger people, and this isn't like to scare people basically, but it does kind of relate to bodybuilding, right? Because it looks like some high hematocrit has equaled stroke. That's somehow related to COVID. That's all I know. So man, take it away.
Well, I don't know if it's even high hematocrit, to be honest with you, but I was intrigued when I saw it because I was having a conversation, discourse, debate, argument, whatever you want to call it, on my personal page. And I had a friend who posted an article, and I hadn't heard anything about this, but apparently there's a a rise in, and it's said to be an alarming rise, that they've noticed in the 30 to 40-year-old age group, excuse me, where these otherwise healthy, and when I say otherwise healthy, that was in quotations, so that's why I'm air quoting it, which I don't know what that means. It could be otherwise healthy, but they're obese.
Yeah.
They're, it's hard telling. I think they may even be implying there aren't any underlying reasons, like they don't have the pre-existing conditions that the older population does that is, dying from COVID. But nonetheless, otherwise healthy people are having strokes. And it has become so obvious that they started to look into it. And of course, it's still early. So, on the one hand, I was thinking, gosh, I'd like to bring this up because there could be implications for someone on gear, as an example, because they're saying that the strokes are related to the impact somehow, they don't know, that COVID has on hemoglobin.
Yeah.
So it may not necessarily be high hemoglobin, but at the same time, if you're on gear, you're at risk of having higher hemoglobin, which means, and RBCs and hematocrit, which means you're already at a slightly higher risk of having a stroke anyway.
Yeah.
So, I'm going back and forth because I have this client who's a doctor in Canada, and she specializes in blood pathology and specifically hemoglobin. So I hit her up and I said, hey, what do you think about this? It's probably too early to tell, but what are your thoughts? And she said it's just too early. They don't really know why it is. So she said it could be, that there are other conditions that haven't been noticed yet. Someone could have had a flight and they could have gotten off of the flight, and COVID played into that in some way. Yeah. And I said, my concern, and I was just thinking out loud, and I always remind her I'm not a doctor like she is. I'm just some dumbass on the internet talking about bodybuilding.
Yeah, exactly. You're a bro on a podcast, right?
But I always make it a point. I may always make it a point with people like that who are smarter than I am, well-read, better educated, probably more articulate, all those things. She's better looking too. That I'm just throwing out ideas, but I thought, people are just sitting around doing nothing. Even if you were active before, you're sitting. Some people sit there for fucking 4 or 5 hours and just watch Netflix. So that in and of itself could potentially be, a risk too. When they tell you when you're done training. I know this is always in my brain because I drive a long way to and from the gym. When I'm done training legs, I don't like to get into the car right away and sit there for an hour.
Oh God!
With blood in my legs. I just think it's a real bad idea.
It's a guarantee you're going to have a cramp the second you stand up.
Yeah, exactly. Or potentially, a blood clot or something else. I mean, you don't know.
Right.
So I'm not trying to get, I don't get in my car after legs and God, I hope I get home and I don't die. But at the same time, I'm trying to take precautions to make sure nothing happens too. So I think, about sitting around. You also have people now who are day drinking. And even if they're not day drinking, they're drinking more. So you got drinking with not being fully hydrated. And anybody who knows even the most rudimentary, shit about strokes and everything, if you're not hydrated, then you run a higher risk of having a stroke as well. So I don't know. There's nothing definitive. They don't know why, but it's something to consider if you're on gear that, okay, I'm not old. I am, but somebody may be thinking, well, I'm only 30 or 35 and I'm healthy, and everybody thinks they're healthier than they are anyway. But nonetheless, my immune system isn't compromised. I haven't gotten sick. But if you're on a bunch of gear and you've been on it for a while and your hemoglobin or your blood viscosity is higher, then this could be something that you want to be careful with.
Sure.
If it could impact or increase the chance that you could have a stroke.
Yeah. Huh.
I think it sounds more like just people sitting on their ass for the last 2 months than anything could be a problem.
And that may well be, it could be that simple. I just think with everything, it's so early and everybody's guessing. I'm guessing. We don't really know. We're not going to know for quite a while, but at least they're looking into it. And they said, there's articles that I've seen pop up. Once she posted that article, I went and I looked because I thought, maybe this is just some bullshit that she happened to come across. But there were a handful of other articles, and there was a couple videos about doctors talking on YouTube. And I'm always careful with YouTube because anybody can make a video on YouTube, and then all of a sudden it's like it's this credible thing. But if you have doctors that are talking about this thing and logically it makes sense versus say being flat or conspiracy theories or things like that. It kind of all fit, and it was enough to make me go, okay, well, there's something else to look at that I never would have thought and I had not heard of until yesterday.
I'll tell you what, I know that, talking about sitting around, I started getting this, I wouldn't even call it a cramp in my legs. This past week, I was scheduled to train legs, and I had this, like, it almost felt like my quads were already fatigued, if that makes sense. I don't know what it was, but I think it's a result. I'm not doing cardio right now, and my gym is literally, I'm looking at it. It's like 10 feet from me. You know what I mean? We walk the dog every day, but that's really about the only walking that I do. And I'm wondering, like, what was going on with my legs. I went to go train. It's like it hurt. It's like it already felt pumped. I don't know how to explain it, but it was a pain in the muscle belly that I've never felt before. And my adductors were super tight. And needless to say,
sounds like your IT bands are all tight.
Yeah, everything was exactly. Mm-hmm. And that's what I had to do.
Let me tell you, when I stretched
I couldn't train.
Like really deep stretch.
Yeah.
I felt way better the whole day. Like,
I couldn't
way
train.
Looser, way everything.
I had to take that day. I did like a few light sets and I stopped. And I had to do the same thing. I had to just stretch. And then by the next day, I started feeling better. It took me like 2 days, though, to get to train legs. That's not the norm. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm in good shape. I train every day. I exercise. Think about, like you're saying, Skip, the people that are just sitting there and already like sedentary human beings. I think it's a good reason to do something physical, right?
It is, until you post about it on social media, and then your friends who don't exercise and they don't eat right and they get offended because you're trying to remind people that obesity is a morbidity or a comorbidity with COVID. And people with obesity or people who don't move and they don't train, they do two things. Number one, they deny it. They think it doesn't have anything to do with them, because most average people think that obesity means morbidly obese. Like, that person is 400 pounds, they're obese. No, you're obese and you don't even know it.
Yeah, I'm technically obese.
And the second thing they do, and it happened, it was so predictable. They then accuse me of saying that working out, or being better than everybody, but that working out makes you immune to COVID. It's just the funniest thing. So I have to remind them, I didn't say that.
Yeah. And
I may not be any healthier than anybody else, but we need to take care of ourselves. And if you do get sick and it's because of these things, you're going to be kicking yourself in the ass because you don't. And my question to everybody really was, where would we be with all these restrictions if more people took care of themselves and we weren't number 12 in the world for obesity? And let me tell you that the first 11 that are ahead of us, the only one you'll know is Kuwait. The other ones are like French Polynesian Islands, Tonga, shit like that. There is not a major country in front of us for obesity. We're almost 35% obese in this country. That says something. What the connection is to what we're dealing with right now, hard telling. But I think simple logic would say it's playing a part. How much is it playing? I don't know.
Yeah. Huh.
So in short, let me just paraphrase. If fat motherfuckers would take care of themselves, we might not be on restrictions right now. And there wouldn't be as many people dying. I mean, I'm half, best lie is a half truth.
Yeah.
Part of that actually is true, because if we did take care of ourselves better, maybe there wouldn't be these issues. Now, I go and I say this, and I'm thinking, God, if I die in the next couple days, some of these people are going to have motherfucker was trained and everything else. Then he just up and died.
Right. Lifted weights all his life.
That's how fat people. That's how fat people laugh.
You got some oats on your lip.
Oh, shit. I hope my wife is not watching. It's an ongoing issue in this house where my kids will take pictures of me. My wife will take pictures of me with food on my face, and I don't even know it's there. It's like an old thing. I never did that before. But my wife will be like, "Really?" And immediately I know I got food on my face. And I'm like, "What?" But I didn't know. They'll take pictures and they send them to each other. And they think it's just a goddamn funny thing. So thank you for telling me.
I'm gonna get a screen cap of that after we're done here, and I'm gonna post it, tag you in it, so your family can all see it.
Skip, I can't see why anybody would ever get upset with you on social media. I mean, your approach is so soft and unopinionated and clean and fresh.
Right. right down the middle.
I don't know how they couldn't. I don't know how people could get upset with you.
They know, the ones who know me get more upset because they know what I'm doing before anybody who doesn't. I'm very stealthy about it, so I try to like.
Oh yeah, you're stealthy.
Slowly reel. I mean, you know me though. You know
you're
what
like, I'm. You're like covert. You're like black ops social media guy.
Yeah. I'm that SEAL guy with the seaweed hanging off his head. That's me when I'm typing.
Did my gimmick account ride you pretty hard?
I don't know. You probably have so many of them. Which one was it?
I'm not telling.
All right, fair enough.
That's how I entertain myself. I go give Skip on social media, start shit with him. I'm gonna put like a big fat Buddha, Jabba the Hutt looking guy on my avatar.
See, and I forget that you're on my personal because a lot of people in bodybuilding aren't. And I know what's going to happen now. People are going to be like, "Oh, what's?"
Now they're going to go look for mine and yours. Stop that.
But I don't let very many people on my personal page who I don't really know because I have my pictures of my kids and I talk about politics and religion. I don't do any of that with my business. I just talk about bodybuilding. So I want the bodybuilding industry on my business, not in my my personal shit unless I know them. So don't be offended if I message you back and say, that this is my personal account and it's really boring and I it's all about my family and I don't post very much. And
you know what? I got that message from you.
Did you?
I did. Like back, I can't remember when it was. It was like, but it was before I knew you. Like back years ago, you were doing PED and I sent you a message and was like, hey, we do this podcast called Bodybuilding Nerds Radio and we talk about your show every time you guys put it out. And then I sent you a friend request too, and you were like, hey, thanks for listening. And by the way, and then it was a copy and paste, just
it
the
was
spiel.
A copy and paste. Yeah. And matter of fact, what happens is you can only send like 40 or 50 before Facebook shuts you down.
Really?
They think that they think you're. They when I say shut you down, they think that you're messaging like you have something that you're trying to sell or you're trying to manipulate people or something.
Yeah.
So then it like gives you a couple reminders saying you have to know who you're friending and I'm like, whatever. But I end up getting so many and I wait like 6 months and then I have to go through them as quickly as I can to try to, get, because I don't want them just sitting there. And that's what happens. I've got probably 300 or 400 of them right now on a personal account because I haven't done it in a while. But it'll only let me do 40 or 50 at a time. So that's why the cut and paste. But it's not a lie. You know what I mean? It really is that I don't, like at that time I didn't know you. So, like now it's no big deal. I just have this thing with people who, with being like talking and interacting with people with my family and my kids and about religion and stuff like that when I don't know them. That's really all. That's why I don't do that on my business page. I only do that with personal. So the people on my personal page, I probably only have 500 friends on my personal page, but it's all family and people that I legitimately know.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to switch this to bodybuilding because we have a topic.
Thank God.
We have a topic that, well, I guess the other one was kind of bodybuilding related, but we have a topic that was brought to us by a very long time listener. And when I say that, I mean he listened a long time ago and then he stopped. But he's back. This guy listened back in like the PED days. We both had listened, so I wasn't even a part of that program, back then. But anyway, he lifted for some time. He was really into the lifestyle, really into the sport. He did really well. He lost a ton of fat, got into really good shape. Never competed or anything, but he was like he identified with bodybuilding. He ended up getting sick. He was basically out of everything. You know what it's like? If you get hurt, you get sick, you start like not wanting to pay attention to the stuff that you used to love because you can't do it. He stopped following everything related to bodybuilding for like at least a solid 3 years, if not 4. So he's back. He actually logged into Facebook so that he could watch live today with us. And his question is now that he's back into the sport, in the lifestyle, what are the major things that have changed in the last 3 to 4 years in bodybuilding? And you can interpret that however you like, be it, technology, with nutrition, training principle ideas, what's popular now, or you could go to the, the other side of it, like all the new divisions that are out there, whatever you want to do, however you want to take it.
A bunch of guys have died.
Yeah.
I was going to bring up Matt Porter because I was thinking, wow, well, Matt Porter passed away. That was pretty big to the bodybuilding community.
Carver, Piana, I mean,
yeah. Dallas.
Man, there's been a bunch of dudes that have passed away in the last 3 or 4 years. A bunch. Nasser? No, he died before that. Who else has passed away in the last 3 or 4 years? I mean, it's pretty sad we can't remember, but there's been a bunch of guys.
Well, that's why, because there's been so many. I don't want to say we lose track of them, but there have been enough that it is hard to keep track. But from a training standpoint or a nutrition standpoint, supplementation standpoint, I don't see, big.
You know what? I think that dosing has gone down in the last 3 or 4 years.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I would agree with that.
I think people have gone. I think people have gone to more of a moderate route in general. Not all.
That's a good point. I think you're right. What about training in this sense? And I don't know if this has been the 3 or 4 year mark, but there has been this shift. The paradigm has shifted a little bit from the low volume, high intensity to more of a higher volume and a little bit more higher frequency. But I don't know if that has fallen in the last 3 or 4 years. I've done this for so long. Sometimes these years run together and I can't say, gosh, what happened 5 years ago versus 7 years ago versus 3 years ago. So that shift has happened as well. As an example, it's not like people don't use DC training or HIIT training anymore, but they don't use it like they did into, out of the 90s into the 2000s. And now that we've passed again, DC training was big before 2010. Hey, what's up, bud? I'm able to,
He knew the show.
So, yeah, exactly. So
New York City, man, it's busy here. But
so that has changed, I think, but I don't know if that has changed in the last 3 or 4 years. I always look at the industry through a very cynical lens, and I have to be very careful of that.
Yeah.
But I don't see big changes.
I think the dosing thing is one of them that's something, especially being involved with the show here and talking about stuff. And I think people have taken a more conservative route. And how long has it been since we did PE radio? Has it been that long?
And it's been longer than I thought. It's been.
Yeah, because I was listening in like 2014. So that was 6 years ago. And it was probably before that, I'm thinking.
When did we start this?
We started this in 2016.
16.
We're on show number 25 or so?
Yeah, we're on show number 3 now.
No, I mean, really, what number are we on?
We're on like 80 something. 80.
Holy shit, 80?
Yeah. Well, I think you're right, Scott. The dosing because I remember a decade ago, everybody was ramping it up, like 2006, 2008. Maybe it was the people I was around, and maybe it's because I was pushing harder and I was around people that were competing. But no. I feel like everybody was like, you have to run at least a gram a test if you're competing. That was the mindset a decade ago. If you looked at the boards, everybody like, you're going to run primo with that? Well, you got to push primo hard. You got to do 800 milligrams a week, stuff like that. Versus now I see people that are like, oh, I just like to keep the test low and run 300 of this, or 400 of that, and that's it.
Could be because everybody in our circles has gotten old like us. And so, everybody we know well that would tell us stuff is like, oh, yeah, dude, I'm dropping it down. But,
I think it's because we've seen everybody die, too, so there's that. I mean, when you're older, that kind of thing has an impact on you. So you start to look at the things like basically those risks, and you start to weigh them cost to benefit. And I think that has – now, the fact that we have somehow been able to get through to the younger – I hate to say generation because that makes me sound really old, but that's really
just own it, man. Just own it.
I know.
Tell them how many years you've been doing this.
The younger generation really has come on board.
Yeah, they have
much more than I ever would have thought. Because I remember when Dante started this, and I started in on it with him too, and it was in the latter years of when intense muscle was really popular, and It's been a long fucking road, and they would fight and get mad, and you're a fucking idiot. I mean, the shit that they said to Dante was just insane. And with him being so well respected in the industry, I was really surprised to see him get that kind of backlash. But he stuck it out, and
he was saying like do low doses or what?
well, he was just saying, but he was basically saying, and I'm paraphrasing, that it was just overkill, and that the answer was just to take more gear, and everybody was more concerned about gear than anything else. And I understood why. At the same time, he never really said, take ridiculously low amounts. He was just saying that the amount of gear that was being used was just absurd and ridiculous. And that's the part that I completely agreed with him at the time.
Yeah. I feel like years ago too, we were under the impression that like, well, that had to be what the pros were doing. Guys like myself, guys that weren't pro, guys that weren't hanging out with people that were pros. You saw someone who was like 3 times your size, and it was easy to say like, it has to be the answer,
Well, and some of them were doing those ridiculous. I mean, I had it from the mouths of people, of what specific people. So when you had, and I'm not going to mention names, but when you have the top, king shit guy who's not doing very much, and then you have the guy who's second, and he's taking 10 grams of shit, because I didn't mention his name, 10 grams of shit, and can't figure out why he's got edema 2 weeks before a show.
Literally 10 grams.
10 grams. 10 grams.
And was he really, really high up in bodybuilding?
He was number 2. Behind Phil Heath. Behind Phil Heath, he was number 1.
Well, it depends on when you're talking about. But if you're talking about the era, say...
You didn't take an investigator to figure
I know,
that
but
one out.
I understand that, and I'm putting it out for that reason. All I'm saying is I'm not going to say who it is, because I don't want anybody coming to me.
I'll stop fishing,
saying,
man.
You said this about this, or, you said this about me. I didn't fucking say your name.
I'll stop fishing.
But that was the issue. You've got such bad edema in your ankles, and you can't get rid of it because of this massive, probably. I don't know personally what this, but probably because you're doing fucking 10 grams of shit. I mean, that could be the issue.
Yeah.
And it could have been an issue ongoing behind the scenes between those two people. Who knows? It may have helped to fuel the fire if those two people didn't get along very well. I don't know.
I think, as I think about it, I think the Dallas McCarver's death made some. I mean, I could think back to that and people I'd worked with, or we're working with, or whatever, say, hey man, it kind of like opened some eyes to say, even though at first there was no autopsy at first or whatever, but a lot of younger guys were like, it wasn't some old dude in his 40s that did a bunch of freaking GHB and partied and was on gear for like 30 years. It was a young guy and a big time guy, and so I think if I think back to it, I think a lot of guys went, whoa, wait a minute.
I think you're right.
This is not cool. This wasn't some washed up dude in his 40s, that was still trying to be the man. It was, a young guy, and arguably the most popular up and coming bodybuilder. So
absolutely.
And then, when his autopsy came out, I think people kind of went, wow, saw the results of that. They were like, ooh, and I think it kind of cooled a lot of people's jets, that were probably wanting to get aggressive.
Well, I think you guys tell me if you feel the same way, but I think if I had to pick a death in the last 10 years that had the most significant impact on bodybuilding, it would probably be Dallas. Matt would be a very, very close second because of the relationships that he had with people and the type of person that he was. I think more people knew Matt on a personal level than knew Dallas on a personal level.
You know what, too? I want to throw in, because I was thinking about that as well. I think that the difference with Matt is, Dallas, he was a star. We could see the writing on the wall. We could see that he was going to do something fucking huge. And as awesome as that is, it's harder to relate person to person to a Dallas, to a Ronnie, to a Jay. But Matt Porter was a guy that you could relate to. Matt Porter was a guy who was one of us, that he was like, he pushed, he got big. He really pushed it at the national level. We knew who he was. And I just feel like a lot more people could relate to him. He wasn't like the genetic phenom that Dallas was. And to see him pull back. And although we know he may have had some health conditions or whatever, and, people say, oh, well, it was because of the, heart issues or whatever that he had genetically. I think that really scared people too, because it was a guy who pushed hard and then pulled back. And it's like, wait, that's what I did too. Am I a time bomb?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it clearly scared them.
That's a good point. I mean, I think you look at it from two directions. You've got Matt, who was in the industry a long time, good dude. I knew him, and you've got Dallas, who was quite a bit younger than Matt. I think from a standpoint of a younger guy wanting to get in the sport and really go somewhere, I think Dallas's death would be more influential because he was young and he was huge. So, you look at it like, hey, I want to be 300 and 260 on stage. You'd go, wow, this dude was pretty young. From Matt's standpoint, same thing. I mean, but I think from looking at Dallas from the outside, I think that would scare more guys because he was so young and so big.
Yeah.
Big physically,
Wasn't a
Matt
big
wasn't
age
at one
difference,
time, but Matt wasn't nowhere near the size of Dallas.
Yeah.
No, but there wasn't a huge age difference though between the two. And Dallas just had more.
10 years.
He was
10, 12 years.
Was it? How old was Dallas?
Dallas was like 23.
He was pretty young.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I stand corrected. I thought he was more like he was 27. I didn't
look it
know
up.
he was
He was
that
young.
Okay, all right. If he was that young, then I apologize because I didn't. I had them maybe only about 5 years apart. But I think that Dallas being the star and being on a bigger stage from a bodybuilding standpoint. See, we're a little biased to Matt because we knew him so well and saw him come up from nothing. But people didn't do that as much with Dallas in that younger demographic. They just saw him as like this fucking freak who came out of nowhere.
26.
And they wanted to be him instead of knowing him or having a more of a relationship or interactions with him. Look, I'll tell you where I probably made a mistake and it's probably not fair. I probably shouldn't have said, any type of ranking one. That's not fair. Both were so impactful, but just in different ways. But those two deaths stand out above everybody. You could say Rich Piana, but Rich was kind of the time bomb, and he admitted it, and he threw it all out there. An example is Boston Lloyd, and I'm not going to pick on the guy because I don't know the guy.
Yeah.
If he dies tomorrow, no one's going to be and I don't want anything to happen to the kid. So I just want to be clear on that. I have no issues with him. I don't know him well enough. I know his online thing and that sort of shit. That's all I know. I don't know enough about him to say whether I like him or dislike him. But it's very clear that he's been abusive for so long and open about it that if something happened to him tomorrow, no one would be surprised by that. Not to say that people wouldn't be impacted, and especially the younger demographic.
Sure.
But no one's going to be surprised. And I don't think anybody was terribly surprised when Piano went out. Disappointed, sad about it. Surprised, I don't know about surprised. But when somebody like Dallas or something like that, I mean, I remember when it happened with Dallas, I don't want to drag this out, but it became more of an issue because at first it was blamed on insulin.
Yeah.
So there's that, there was a lot of stuff in there, and I understand when bad things happen like that people around the person who passed may try to cover those things, and I understand that. But then it just kind of drags it out, and I think in that particular situation with Dallas, I think it did that. But that doesn't take away from the fact that his death was very influential, I think.
I'll spin this into a slightly different direction because Matt, two things. Shannon, he said that it's been over 5 years because he used to put customers on hold to listen to PED. So whatever. Would you please hold for a moment?
Yeah.
Skip's talking. Hold for an hour.
I'll come back to you when Skip's done. It may be a while.
Matt Marshall had a kind of a cool thought here. He said he was thinking that some of the transition may have been the focus has been more on training, and I could see that. I feel like it used to be real gear focused, and I feel like as a podcast creator, we're putting out 4 or 5 shows a week at times. I can tell you that like a podcast that's all about the doses to take, and you guys, it's not as popular as it once was. Not to mention there's only so much to talk about, right? We've talked about that.
Yeah.
Like how many times can you tell somebody how to use Tren,
Mm-hmm. Well, and think about that too. When was the last time we got a trend question? I've been actually surprised. It's been a while. So that focus has also shifted a little bit too.
That's true. Yeah. And I haven't been editing them out, you know. It's
exactly.
But yeah,
So
training. We get a lot more training stuff, that's for sure. And I do think, you know, like there has been that DC revival. You think that how's the message board doing? How's Intense Muscle? Because I feel like that could be a real good push too to kind of bring that out.
Yeah, I think things are going well with Intense Muscle. I am disappointed because the timing of getting it, like trying to jumpstart it, really kind of went right hand in hand with everybody having to go home and train and not be out. And I feel that that's playing a part too, because when I go on and I don't know if you guys see this or not, tell me what you see, but when I go on my business accounts on social media, specifically Facebook more than anything, people aren't talking about training. They're talking about COVID and the government and everything. We're kind of sidetracked a little bit right now on what's going on with everything in and understandably, because people are very concerned. They're anxious. They're stressed. I understand the unknown, but that has not helped. Let's put it that way. But we still, you know, our traffic is still doing well. It's just not growing the way that I want it to. And I think that once we start to shift back to some sense of normalcy, I think that will help the board a little bit too. Hopefully, you know, we'll see.
I logged in.
Yeah. Did you? Yeah.
yeah.
I did.
On one of his 9 accounts.
Right.
Actually, I logged in.
Do we have is there a training or a diet style that's real popular right now that stands out? Because I think back to like 2009, what was popular then? Keto. Like everything was like, you got to go keto. Everybody was going keto at the time.
It was Dave pushing on the keto.
What's funny though
is keto fire.
Yeah, he was.
Keto is now incredibly popular mainstream. You get out of the bodybuilding industry, keto's just fucking blowing up. Everybody has to be doing keto.
Like modified like we do, or like real keto?
No, real keto.
Really? No kidding.
Yeah, it's really too bad because I saw that with our other diet platform website and stuff that we're doing that was targeted primarily towards mainstream people who wanted to get in shape.
Yeah.
And everybody was asking, you know, keto this, keto that. And when you go on advertisements for, you want to see what's going on currently with normal people, go on viral, like advertisements that become viral and there's thousands of comments, and you'll see on food things like if someone is selling food or healthy food or a bread or something, everything is about whether it's keto, whether it's, you know, everybody wants gluten-free, you know, there'll be some rice product and they'll ask if it's gluten-free. This is how stupid people are. But anyway, there's a lot of that has, I think, changed probably in the last 3 or 4 years. People are more focused on that, but not as much, I don't think, in the bodybuilding industry. I think that's just in society. But it's funny because society lags so far behind bodybuilding that I find it humorous that it's been 10 years since keto, a modified keto approach, not keto, but modified keto, was so popular in bodybuilding that it has pretty much come and gone. And now it's so popular, not just becoming popular, it's been popular for a few years, but it's big. It's big in mainstream society right now, huge.
Matt Marshall said one more thing. I feel like he should be on the show with us because he's killing it here today. He said, talking about like the doses and stuff, he said, here's what the change has been. The newer generation of pros came up in the era of social media and oversharing, and now people hear directly from the pros about their relative moderate doses. And so basically, you know, that makes sense that before we just had to guess, you know what I mean? Or read a message board, and you would see some stuff like there would be like an undercover pro that would post anonymously and like just spill everything. But then you never really quite knew. And usually it was pretty absurd, the doses, you know, you never saw like an undercover pro go up and be like, yeah, I just ran HRT for year round. And then, you know, added in 50 tren every other day at the end of my show. Like, you never saw that.
You have something else going on now too, though, that we would be remiss if we didn't point out, and that is this: with social media now tied, message boards weren't like this. Message boards had anonymity. It wasn't tied to a face unless you wanted it tied to a face, and that wasn't a lot of people. You remember the time when you would post progress pictures and everybody chop off their heads because DK might see me posing or something. It was just this very stealthy type thing. With social media, your name is attached to your face, so I I'm gonna say this, and I don't know if you guys agree with this or not, but I believe this. There's a lot of people doing way more gear than they're saying they're doing.
You think?
I agree with that.
Yep, because the trend right now, they don't want to come out and say it, especially if they're known. They don't want to come out and say, I'm doing a ton of shit.
Yeah.
Because then people will be like, well, what the fuck? He's stupid. He doesn't, all you need is this. A lot of people are covering it up. That's what I think.
Well,
How many? I don't know.
From a marketing standpoint too, if you're a pro, you're trying to get sponsor revenue. You're not gonna go up there and go, hey, I'm on 5 grams a week. That's why I look like that. You're gonna go, no, I'm taking TRT and I take, super shake smoothies from so and so and this from that, and that's it's people are more image conscious now with social media.
Well, and it's also client based though too. Think about it. You could potentially build or pull in more clients if you have people convinced that they don't need to take a lot of shit. Yeah. There are a lot of people out there who go, man, I don't want to try to get huge because I don't want to have to take a lot of shit and I want to come in. Oh, you don't have to do that. Look at me. And Joe's over there going, yeah, look at me. We all don't take a lot of shit when they may well be taking a lot of shit. It's a marketing move. Yeah. And a lot of people are doing it.
And there's a lot of people, we've talked about this before. I mean, we could probably come up with these things all night, really. But I'll say one more is the whole push toward the classic division. That there are, with people that don't want to necessarily, like you said, I thought of it because you said don't want to get huge. They don't want to get huge. They want to be able to compete sooner. And I guess that was happening 4 years ago, but with like men's physique. But now you can still be bodybuilder-esque. You could still be considered hardcore. You still are hardcore doing classic, versus and not getting as big. There's been that, I guess, that thing of it used to be, I guess that was, I don't know. That was here 4 years ago though, wasn't it?
I don't know. I think that the guys who are just all out in the open division and doing a lot of gear, they're kind of the outlier now.
Yeah.
It's almost kind of, well, shit, the rest of us, we want to look good and we want smaller waists and we don't want to do a ton of gear. And that's kind of the trend. So I think the open bodybuilders are kind of outliers, I think.
That's what I like about
it.
Which we kind of like.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how it was years ago.
There's more money to be made as a classic competitor than there is an open bodybuilder.
Absolutely.
I'm sure it's more marketable.
You're more marketable.
Yeah. And they're pulling way more ass. I don't care what anybody says. You'll get open bodybuilders who right now will be either messaging or they're going to message us later going, oh, I pull plenty of ass. You don't pull as much ass as a classic dude. Nope. A badass classic dude is pulling tons of fucking ass.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Tell us about it, Skip.
I asked my wife, I'm like, look, who would you rather sleep with, this cat or this cat? She's like, oh, definitely that one. And it's always classic. So there's that. I was like, classic or I'm like,
told me, but
I'm like, bitch, that's a picture of me. You can't say him. What the fuck? That's me. I've been sleeping with you for 30 years. What the fuck? I'd sleep with him in a heartbeat.
All right. What do you guys say we do some questions? Scott, are you excited? We'll do some bodybuilding questions.
I'm pumped up.
All right. Before we do, I want to shout out our sponsor, True Nutrition. I saw a post by them the other day. I never thought about this. If you go to the store and you buy a 5-pound tub of protein, you get what weighs 5 pounds. At True Nutrition, they measure out 5 pounds of protein and then they add the flavor to it. So you actually get 6. I didn't know that. Did you know that, Skip?
I actually did, and
I didn't know that.
True Protein or True Protein. This is how long I've been with them.
Right.
True Nutrition, because it was first True Protein, would be pretty disappointed if they heard me say that I did know that, and I guess I assumed everybody knew that, but that is that's a very good point. Very good point. They also have a it's basically a pina colada. I think it's Tropic Colada, something like that. EAAs.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Each mango was pretty good, but this one is coming in next order, and I'm going to be checking it out because I'm not sick of the mango. Yeah. But I'm like, oh, shit, I'll try because I went flavorless for a while, and I would just put Mio in it, and that was okay, but it wasn't that great. As soon as they started flavoring, I'm like, oh, this is the shit. This is good shit because the EAAs by themselves, oh, man.
They're the worst.
Yeah.
There's nothing like that first time you try it. Can you even remember that, Skip? I remember the first time I was like, yeah, I'll throw these aminos in here. Hell, I'll throw a little extra in here. And guess what, man? Without any kind of flavor, that is not pleasant.
Well, what I would do, it's been recently, within the last probably, I've only been using flavored EAAs for about a year. What I would do is I would have Mio, I'd have an extra thing of Mio in my trunk of my car, so that I could put the powder in there and then, mix it right before I, went to train. Well, sometimes I'd run out and I'd be like, fuck, I got to have my EAAs, it just is what it is. And it's rough. It's rough. And it makes you not want to drink your water.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You end up not drinking as much, but it's rough. It's rough. The flavoring, you got to go with the flavoring. You can call yourself hardcore, but you got to.
You know what? I still, and maybe it's because I'm cheap. You get a lot more servings with the raw EAAs. So, but also though I'm using carbs. So when I use carbs, I can throw the EAAs in there and that flavors it for me. But I've been cheap. I haven't tried the flavored EAAs that they have. So check it out though, guys. Use our code ADVICES, get some additional savings, and keep this show alive by doing so. All right, questions. We had a question about Gyno, and this is kind of a weird one. I feel like S2H will be a good resource on this. If I gotta
be Gyno.
Why you gotta be Gyno?
Yeah. Fire with it. Fire with it. I'm preparing myself.
All right. I got to find it because I don't even know where it's at. It's on my desktop here somewhere. So I'll come back to that one. Instead, I've got another one about this is the lower back issue. And this is exactly what I was thinking about because this is what I've been dealing with. Guy deals with lower back pain. What are some of the things that you can do, Scott, as far as stretches and whatnot? What's going on with lower back pain in relation to like tight hamstrings, tight glutes, all of that?
Well, according to my wife, I don't have tight glutes recently, she told me. But I got lots of lower back pain. One of the things I got was one of those teeter hang up, the new one of those inversion tables.
Okay.
And those things work pretty good. Make sure you get the new one, though, because the old one will rip your damn ankles off. It doesn't have padding. Stretching. You can work your, I call them humpers. My wife has me do these. They're like hip thrust, while you're laying flat on your back.
Yeah.
To strengthen, your core, your back, glutes, and all that. But I think stretching, dude, I mean, when I stretch, like really stretch, I mean, spend like 30 minutes stretching and really stretch really deep. And I think I feel way better and it just works, and that inversion table works. The only problem with that thing is I can only hang upside down for so long, maybe 3 to 4 minutes where I feel like I'm going to pass out.
Oh, you know what you got to do? Yeah.
You put it at an angle like this.
That's what it is.
And it works okay, but it doesn't work as good when you're completely inverted. But stretching is huge. Also, people don't realize sometimes if they stand a lot, the kind of shoes they wear can affect their back, So I like to, wear some pretty comfortable shoes or some certain shoes that, work good for me. But stretch, dude. Just go get a foam roller. Go put a TV show on you're going to watch, get on the floor, roll, stretch, all kinds of just stretch, and you'll feel a lot better.
It's funny because he just touched on the two things I'm going to say, but I'm going to elaborate a little bit more. Without stretching is number one. Without stretching, basically it's the number one thing that has kept me injury-free for the last 4 years, and I'm now able to start to, within the last year or so, I've been able to really start to PR my leg poundages, including squatting. So it's just day and night. Chiropractic adjustments helped, but it was more of a Band-Aid issue. Stretching actually fixes the issue. The inversion table can work depending on the injury to the lower back. I say injury, I'm assuming that the guy who was talking about lower back pain had an injury. Not everybody does. But I talk about lower back pain from an injury standpoint because I have had chronic issues with it. However, mine was not from compression. So, like as an example, 5 days after I had an injury, I could hold weight on my back without any problem. The compression didn't hurt. If you have compression issues, then something like an inversion table will help because it's decompressing the spine.
Yeah.
But I didn't have that. Mine was more of a leverage issue where the lower back and the hips, it was due to in not being flexible enough, but primarily through the hamstrings. You asked specifically why. Here's what I say. It's the piriformis, psoas, and the hamstrings.
Yes.
Okay, those three are just the fucking king. And if you can I won't train legs. If I don't have enough time to stretch prior to legs, I won't train legs.
No kidding.
That's where I am. I've had too many injuries that I know I'm gambling and the vulnerability is there. When I stretch and I religiously stretch, the only time I've had any injuries even prior to the 4 years, or not prior, but before the 4 years, was if I went a few weeks and I didn't have time to stretch, or I only stretched sporadically, and God damn it, it happened again. In the last 4 years, I have stretched religiously and will not train legs. And people will say, well, what are you doing stretching prior? There's two ways to stretch, or two ways I've used stretching. I'll stretch after workouts if I want to increase my range of motion and the flexibility of that muscle. I did that for the first 2 years to make sure, because I was that tight. I would increase and basically open up, is what I call opening up the hips. Once I got to the range of motion that I needed, I only now stretch prior to legs, and it's not an aggressive stretching. It's more just to loosen up and get that flexibility from left to right, making sure it's even. Sometimes I'm a little tighter on one side for whatever reason, so I'll do a couple extra stretches on that side to make sure I'm open and that everything is even. The other thing is shoes. Excellent point. I didn't think Scott was going to touch on it, but shoes are huge, not only with walking around, but what you're training in. Here's an example. If you've got knee problems, you don't want an elevated heel. If you've got lower back problems, an elevated heel will help, and especially if you have hamstrings that are not terribly flexible. Why? Because the flatter your foot to the floor, the more your hips want to come underneath you, okay? Come what's called posterior. So they come from the front, or they come from the back, like almost like an arch position, and they, in the bottom position, when you take a video of your squat and you want to see what your hips and your lower back are doing, do it from the side. Because if you see your butt start to come underneath, the more it comes underneath, the more vulnerable your lower back is to an injury at that point. It's called a butt wink in powerlifting. Okay, so excuse me. If your hamstrings are flexible the way they're supposed to be, you can get ass to grass without your hips turning under you.
Yeah.
If your hips start to turn under you, you can't go ass to grass. You can only go as deep as how or when your hips start to roll underneath you. It's not just with squatting either. It's with angle leg pressing. So if your ass starts to come up off the pad, you don't go deeper than that because you're asking for trouble. Here's the problem. When you're young and you're made of rubber, you can get away with it. And you think, oh, I'm good. You start to get older and stiffer, and you're not going to get away with that same range of motion. It's not going to work, and it's degenerative over time. And when I say time, years or decades. It will fuck your back up over time. So if you're in it for the long haul, you better start doing shit right first. People will say, well, I don't have any problems, so I don't need to stretch. Bad idea. I don't know that I would if I didn't have problems either. I get it. But the point is if you plan on staying in this for the long haul and you're trying to stave off future lower back injury, stretch anyway, just to be preventative. And it'll take you many, many more years down the line without injuries.
Yeah. I think that's all solid.
Yeah. And one other thing too is you can carry too much weight on your body. You know, your body's, you know, genetically built to carry so much weight. And, you know, whenever I get up to a certain weight, no matter if it's good weight or bad weight, I start having more back problems. So, you know, I can almost tell you if my back I don't weigh myself very often, but my back starts bothering me, lower back. If I go down the scale, I'll be over that certain weight point almost every time. Yep.
If you have some people say, well, I just get a pump in my lower back that's so brutal because I'm on gear and I'm heavy right now. What do I do? That's not a back injury. But what I recommend to people who do that is stretch piriformis, psoas, and hamstrings in between every set.
In between each set, huh?
Every set. Once you've got your breathing, get down on the floor and do and if you're wondering what stretches to use, you can Google shit for piriformis, psoas, and hamstrings, or you can go to my TRT bodybuilding DVD on teamskip.com, and I go through my stretching protocol in detail for every stretch. And it's all around. I do a lot of other stretches too, but the main focus is on those three.
Do you know where that's at off? Like, we don't have to pull it up now, but would that be something you could link me to, or we could link the listeners to those videos in particular?
Teamskip.com.
All right, but I mean, like,
Teamskip.com.
do they have to sift through? I mean, because I know the DVD is long. Is there like just something that says stretching or?
Right there on the homepage for teamskip.com, up at the top on the left, there'll be the longevity video that you can click on. And on the right, you just click on the TRT bodybuilding video. And that's all you have to do is click on the TRT bodybuilding DVD, and it takes you right to it.
Okay. Do you know where the stretching stuff is in it in case people wanted to just check that out?
It's one of the chapters. There's like 27 chapters. I can't tell you which one it is. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you can find it then if you wanted to. It'll be in that. Okay, awesome. Yep. I found that question I was looking for. All right, long-time listener from the UK, having some issues with puffy, sore nipples and worried about gyno. This is a weird one. He says, only running 300 milligrams of test sip a week. It started around the week 4 mark. He's at week 6 now, and very minimal improvement after introducing 80 milligrams of Nolvadex and Letro. He said all he could get a hold of would normally use 8X. He's using Letro at 5 milligrams a day for the past only 4 days. I've never had this problem before. He's run as much as 800 milligrams of test a week. So he's been off gear for a year, and he's just started this cycle now. Scott, I'm turning to you, man. What's going on with this situation? And why is the Nolvadex at 80 milligrams not working?
Maybe it's not any good. I don't know if it's research. It could be questionable, but I would say he needs to inhibit the aromatase process. So with an aromatase inhibitor.
Well, he started the Letro.
Yeah, he's using Letro at 5 milligrams a day.
But it's only been 4 days, so that takes a while to kick in.
It's only 4 days, though. But I would say if well, I'm going to step back to one thing, is that aromatase has been proven to inhibit aromatase more than letrozole. So
he said it's all you get a hold of.
Yeah, if he's using research stuff, I don't know. I don't know where the research market is right now as far as quality, but that could be an issue. Make sure if he's using research, tell him to shake the bottles up. Make sure he's not everything's not sitting down on the bottom.
That's a good.
Make sure he's measuring correctly too, because that's another problem with some of those research droppers. People don't really understand the math to it and get the measurement wrong. But I'd give it a couple more days. I also tell him he could take that 300. If he's taking all that 300 milligrams at one time, he could break it in half to a Monday, Thursday schedule for 150 to stabilize his blood level a little more. Possibly too, since he's used gear before, he could be a little bit older now, so he's aromatizing testosterone to estrogen, at a higher rate. I would say I'm just 4 days into the Letro, I'd give it a little more of a run. If he doesn't get any kind of relief at all, then I'd question the quality of whatever he's using.
You'd almost have to, because I still think at 4 days, at 5 milligrams a day, that's like killing an ant with a grenade.
Don't wear tight shirts either. If he's wearing tight shirts, he's getting he's rubbing up on his nipples and stuff a lot. That's just going to irritate irritate it more.
Let me say this too. I'm going to add this. In the question, I understand that he was clear that he said puffy and sore.
Yeah, he did.
Because this isn't adding up. 300 milligrams of test when he's done 800 before. Yeah. He's on, even though it's only been 4 days, 5 milligrams of letrozole, 80 milligrams of Nolvadex. That would mean that the Nolvadex and the letrozole would basically have to both be garbage.
Yeah.
And then he would have to be ultra sensitive to estrogen. So here's my question to him. How sure are you that your nipples are sore? Because if they're puffy, you could just be fat. And I don't mean that in a shitty way. All I'm saying is I have heard, I'll say this is just my experience. Probably over 70% of people who tell me about puffy nipples, they're just not lean. And they naturally think, oh, shit, this could be gyno. When you have, and I've said this, you guys have heard me say this a lot. When you have gyno, you fucking know you've got gyno. Now, he may be sitting there right now going, I fucking know I got gyno. Yeah. If that's the case, I don't see how the Nolvadex or the letrozole could be real. I just don't. And how he's getting a kickback like that.
Yeah.
I would also tell him to get blood work, but he's in the UK, and I know it's super difficult there to get it. But that's the first. If he came to me and said, hey, I need to, what's up here, I'd tell them immediately go get some labs so you can get a really good in-depth look at what's going on. But in the UK, that's not easy to do.
I think they can now. I think you can't do it. Like, it's hard to do through your doctor, but you can do like through, I think there's companies like Metachecks is one of them. I don't.
They have that now?
Yeah, I don't know how
They used to
good
not.
that company
I'd go
is
get your
in
labs
particular.
done to find out what's going on, because
Yeah.
you said you used 800 milligrams before, but that could have been 10 years ago. We don't know. You know.
Right. Still 300 milligram. I mean, even for someone who's ultra sensitive, man, I mean, I'm even thinking too, I'm like, God, is he taking something else? Is he taking something that there's a prolactin kickback and he's not getting anything, or he's not getting enough from, the Nolvadex isn't going to impact that, or it's not going to impact it enough to fucking matter. So, obviously you can control estrogen, you can control prolactin a little bit, but if he's taking something that could be kicked, but if he says he's just taking 300 milligrams of test, I got to take it at face value, and that just does not add up. So when you say it, it's weird, and I'm not in any way saying he's bullshitting or anything like that. I'm just saying it is weird. I agree with you. That is an odd situation. Now, and I've had enough clients that sometimes people can be absurdly sensitive to estrogen. Now, what I will add is and I'm going to come back to the fat thing. If he's overweight, if he's carrying a higher level of body fat, you tend to be more estrogenic at that point, just from the body fat level. So I've had clients who have started and been very sensitive on 300 milligrams and maybe using HCG, and they've got, high doses of Arimidex to control it. And we've seen the blood work and everything else. When they get lean, they need damn near nothing for the same dosing of testosterone and HCG. So body fat can play a huge role in estrogen as well. So ask yourself and be honest, hey, are you lean? Are you lean enough? Or are you carrying a higher level of body fat that could be contributing to your estrogen issues as well?
Okay. I've got one here about acne, and we've talked about acne in the past, but I felt like it had been a little while. So I figured I'd throw this one back in the mix. Guy who's trying to keep basically back knee, shoulder acne under control, on cycle. I know, Skip, you've never had much of an issue with acne, have you?
No, I never have.
I remember
every now and
saying
then coming off or going on, sometimes I'll break out a little bit, and I always tell people it's usually the large majority of the time when you break out, blood levels are going up or blood levels are coming down. Yeah. If you have acne and your levels have been stable for a long time, you're prone to it.
So, okay. So, because I thought about this ahead of time and I knew that you didn't have a lot of personal experience, but you've been coaching for a long time. Yeah. You obviously have run into people.
Long time.
You've run into people that have had, acne issues. How would you advise a client that came to you and was like, man, I'm starting to really break out. What do I do, Skip?
If blood levels, if we see the blood levels are stable and they're still breaking out, number one thing or the first thing I do is it's B5. It works so well for a lot of people. Yeah. At 1,000 or 1,500 milligrams 3 times a day. It's B vitamin, so it's water soluble. You're going to piss it out. You got to take it a few times a day. That typically, and it takes a little while. It might take 3 or 4 weeks before you start to really see anything. But what it does is it helps to, and I'm setting up Scott for this one, helps to block the production of what's called sebum, which is is the oil. Yeah, exactly. The oil in the skin, where basically acne comes from like the lower levels of the skin. And I should know the dermis, not the epidermis. The epidermis is the top one, right?
Got it right.
Two up. So you see what I'm saying? It tends to come from underneath. So when you kill the production or at least lower the production of the oil of the skin, that helps to cut back on the acne large part of the time. Accutane is the strong, what people used to jump to when we were teenagers. You go to the dermatologist, you give you acne or Accutane, and it, sometimes it's very hepatotoxic. Yeah. And I have heard, and this has been 10 years ago, that a lot of dermatologists had got on board with B5 and were recommending to their clients first to try B5. But yet then I have a daughter who had used B5 all through her teenage years, and she tends to break out. So she got that from her mom, which I always give her shit about. Very oily skin. And she ended up going on Accutane against my advice, but it actually did work real well. And that bitch, her liver value stayed at like 25.
Nice.
So it didn't have, didn't have the impact on her liver that it does for some people. And you know what? Maybe they've changed that compound a little bit. If I'm not mistaken, and someone out there will probably know this, there's another tane that they're using now, from what I understand. It might not be Accutane. It might be some other tane. It's like a.
They use the topical.
I just it's an oral, but I
Okay.
don't know if the chemical has been altered a little bit. I'm gonna get the hiccups because I am too. Nicotine hiccups because I just put that pouch in and I swallowed. Yep, there we go.
I love it when you
So
swallow.
you're burping and spitting into the camera. I'm gonna get a bunch of messages about this.
He's weak.
I'll,
Hey, one thing with acne too is it can back to the don't wear tight shirts. Make sure your clothes are clean. Make sure a lot of people don't really wash their back.
Yeah.
When they take a shower, so get one of those little thingies, the little.
But don't
squeegee
scrub
thingies.
it if you're broken
Don't scrub
out.
it.
Yeah.
Just and make sure you rinse it off real good because your skin's got to breathe.
Yeah.
And
but acne typically isn't from the surface. That's more breaking out from like clogged pores. I'm not saying it's bad. You do need to wash your back if you got oily skin. But that's acne is cystic acne is deep. What you don't
a lot of guys wear those really tight like Under Armour shirts and stuff. What are those things called? Like the the skin tight ones.
Yeah, heat. What are they called?
Whatever they're called.
Yeah, heat gear.
But try to wear looser clothing.
Cold gear.
I'm not a big Accutane fan, especially for somebody who's taking gear and stuff. But some people just get acne. You get acne. It's like losing your hair and going bald. Sometimes it's genetic, and you can't stop it completely.
It is, but sometimes, and I don't know if this guy's like this. I had a client, and I'll be as quick as I can. I had a client in the Colorado 6, who was a very good bodybuilder and good guy, and he was up for the overall, and it was clear he was going to win his class. He should have won the overall, and he was going to go to junior nationals, and we ended up going to junior nationals. And we had a meeting right after prejudging, and the head judge said, if you hand down the winner as this person, I'm not going to call it because of his acne. I'm going to call the next person in line. That motherfucker did that.
Yeah.
I thought it was bullshit because it wasn't bad enough. And I'm, look, you're probably thinking, well, you're a little biased because he's your client. I'm not like that with my clients. If there's something that keeps them out of the top spot, then I'm the first one to tell them.
Yeah.
But they ended up not calling him. So acne can certainly have an impact. And if it's bad enough, nonetheless, it had an impact. And he was not called as the overall, and essentially lost that show because of it. So it can certainly have an impact on your placing if it's bad enough.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing that gets rid of acne is the beach and sun.
That's a good point.
Go to the beach for about 5 days and get in the ocean every day and lay out in the sun. I tell you what, it'll clear some acne up quick.
Yeah, between the sunshine and the salt water, I completely agree with
you.
you.
Two factors there, because you're drying your skin out more, and it helps to. I think those are big. We've talked about it before, but I'll just throw out antibacterial soap. I think that's really beneficial because you have to figure that acne is an infection of the skin. So if you have that infection of the skin and then it breaks open, that's how it spreads. So I think that there's a big factor too of keeping it clean. I think oil too overall, when you have oilier skin, that just gathers more bacteria. So Scott, like you were saying, washing your clothes. One thing people don't think about is their sheets. You change your sheets once a week, whatever. That's pretty average, but realistically, you don't change your pillowcase every day. But if you have your face on that pillow for 8 hours a night and then you put it on there again the next night, the chance you're going to build up a lot. So I'd heard Palumbo say years ago, and it's advice that I've followed and advice that I've given is if you have acne on your face, use a fresh pillow every night. Basically what he said to do, he'd do, and I've done it. Sleep on one side of the pillow one night, flip it the next night, and then change it the third night. So I think that's a good method.
Before we change topics, let me throw in one thing that I have come up with recently that I came across, and I was surprised by this. Not everybody's in the gym right now. I understand that I am, but when you go back, you're going to potentially deal with the same thing that I've been dealing with. I actually started to break out on my back in more of a rash, and I couldn't figure out what it was. It was like right around my middle traps only, between my shoulder blades to my traps to the middle of my back.
Yeah.
Could not figure out what it was. You know what it ended up being?
What's that?
Everybody is using so much disinfectant now on the equipment and on the pads.
Oh shit!
Because I sweat so profusely because there's no air in gyms right now because they're not open yet. Never mind that the Miami gyms typically don't have a lot of air anyway, so it depends on demographically where you're at. Maybe you're training in your garage. Be careful of using too much of this shit because it started to basically break my back out. Not with acne, but it was itchy. It was red bumps, and I could not figure out what the fuck it was, and that's what it was.
Put a towel down. Put a towel down.
Well, I still have because I train in a sweatshirt, and I have a t-shirt underneath. So I don't know that a towel, it could help. It's one more layer, but the point is I sweat through everything anyway. So if it's getting through a t-shirt and sweatshirt, there's a lot of that shit on there. And that's what's happening right. And when we go back to the gym, that's probably what's going to be happening anyway, is people are going to be spraying shit with so much more disinfectant than they were before. I actually had to laugh because I said the other day, I'm like, God, wouldn't it be funny if we have and I say funny not as a haha, but ironic that we have these deaths with COVID and we have all these issues with COVID, and then we come back. I wonder what all this disinfectant's going to do to us too, because that shit can't be very good when you're slathering it on everything.
I saw a lady the other day. She had a gun belt on with 2 holsters on each side, and she had disinfectant bottles in them.
Nice.
Like her mask and everything. I'm like, holy shit. She just squirt somebody in the eye.
Yeah. Gun smoke theme, whistling.
You know what else is interesting? I have never heard anybody say this before on a podcast. It's something I know I figured it out. Cystic acne. You can't put a cream on that to make it go away. It's just so deep. But you know what can work really beneficially is a steroid cream, because that's going to reduce inflammation. So, and if you have something strong enough, it can work pretty quick. I know I've been to I used to have bad acne years ago, and I had it as a teenager on my shoulders and stuff. It was not pleasant. And then going to gear, I had future breakouts because of that. I was already prone. At the dermatologist, they would actually use an injectable steroid that they would just stick right under the skin in an area that was affected or infected, and it would bring that swelling down and the redness down really quick and help the healing.
But it was a corticosteroid, just to clarify.
Oh yeah. They weren't putting D-ball in there,
right? Prednisone or something. I can see people injecting Anadrol into their back, going, I don't know why it's working, but now I can't feel my legs or my dick. So.
Somebody's going to go to the doctor this week. I think I got a pimple on my back. Can I get some Mastron? Yeah.
All right. I'm going to look at some questions here that we had on the thread itself. Let me see what we've got here. So off-season question says, I'm 250 pounds and trying to get to 280, 290. Usually at 350 grams of protein, 600 carbs. I'm stalling at 250. I was thinking of shooting the protein up higher, more 450 grams of protein with 800 to 1,000 carbs on medium, and 800 carbs on medium days, 1,000 carbs on high days. Around 120 grams of fat. Is 450 grams of protein too high? He says, I'm not worried about getting too fat, and he's used to eating like this.
It's not too much if he doesn't have any pre-existing, kidney issues. He's not going to 450 grams at 290. Let's just say he's feeding the weight that he wants to at 290. That's if it's twice the amount of protein or twice the amount of grams of protein. If you're doubling it per pound, then he's got plenty of room there. 450 would probably be a good place to be. If he just wanted to get to 270. I would say up the protein. You didn't mention the fats at first. I was going to mention the fats because I thought he was only doing carbs and protein. I was like, dude, bro, you got to get some fat in there. But it sounds like he's got fat in there too. So that probably would work. But I would say push the protein. I'd probably push the protein before the carbs. He's got plenty of carbs in there. He should, to fuel his workouts. And then if you don't get it from the protein, then start adding carbs and fat.
I'd say look at what you're eating too. Just don't look at the macronutrients. And maybe, I know when I used to want to put weight on, I had to spread my meals out a lot more. So instead of eating 5 or 6 times a day, I'd eat 8 or 9, and from waking up to before I went to bed. So I would not so much raise the macros a ton, the calories with it and everything, is I would just stretch everything out a lot farther and intake food, on hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, instead of just even tighter than that sometimes, instead of just like having, meal one as a whole meal and then a shake or whatever, and in between, then meal, have 3 solids and a couple shakes. I just took all the whole foods and stretched it out over a longer period of time.
What's your thoughts on using more fats post workout? I talked to a guy not too long ago, Scott Mendelson, smart dude, and he had this whole idea of kind of keeping carbs moderate and then really hammering the fats post workout. And he explained his thoughts on why that had worked and everything. And it almost runs contrary to what a lot, like we've always kind of, my mindset had always been, the way I was taught was you almost kept the fats lower. And relied on more carbs around training because then they would like get in there faster and everything. But what about the idea of getting more calories from fats in general? Like any thoughts on that around training?
Yeah, you're talking about post workout?
Yeah. Figure like post workout, something like that. I mean, this guy was using a lot too. He was saying like, I can't remember what it was, but it was like 80 grams of fat post workout, like working up to that, getting your body used to it.
Because you got to get your body used to converting fat. So, I mean, it takes, I messed with this before. So it's not something you can just jump right into.
Yeah.
But you can start to implement more fats and reduce carbs. And it's also when we say carbs, that's kind of a general term. What kind of carbs are they? But I did it. It worked pretty good. But you can't just go, hey, I'm going to take 80 grams of carbs. You can get your body as it gets used to intaking more fats, to work for you, but it's not something you can dive right into. And I think a lot of people like to use a faster acting carb around workouts. I don't know if that's good, but I think some people can overdo it, to where they're using more of a simple carb, and it can kind of bite you in the ass too on that end. So
I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it if he was trying to get lean. I'm not against fat intake when there's an insulin response. And we got a new generation of trainers coming up that are questioning a lot about skip loading and things like that, because I have a higher intake of skip loading myself and for some of my clients versus others who need a lower fat intake. Post-workout, I still am of the belief, and I understand that some people may think it's antiquated, but it's antiquated because it serves its purpose to not have fat in there to get that insulin response and pack away as many carbs as you can. Now, you may end up turning around and having a meal only an hour and a half later because your body will suck up those nutrients post-workout with that insulin response, and then you can get some fat in the next meal. I'm not big on fats post-workout if you're getting lean. However, people do need to understand that muscle will still suck up triglyceride. People tend to think, oh my God, there's an insulin response. That means if insulin is there and there's any fat intake, I mean, this has been the long held belief. If there's any fat intake, it just automatically goes to body fats. That's just defeating the whole purpose. That's just not the case. That's just not how it works. So I think that it's, in his case, in Scott's case, I don't know if he was trying to get lean or if he wasn't. If he was trying to get lean,
no, we're talking about growing muscle.
Okay, okay, then I could see that. That's the other thing too is when you add fat, you get a slower or less of an insulin response from the carbohydrate from that meal. So you're going to drag it out a little bit more. He may not be eating an hour and a half later. So let's say he eats, another 2 or 3 hours later. I don't want to say it's apples and oranges, but I mean, you can accomplish the same thing. He's just using a different method to do it. I don't know I'd like to know what the ideology is or what his explanation is with the higher fats. Like if he's going, like that meal is so much is significantly higher in fat than other meals, then I would like to, I mean, I'm intrigued. I don't think it's dumb. The guy's a smart guy, but I would want to hear what that reasoning is. And it may well be sound.
Yeah, have you ever found a situation where fats were an answer? Because I guess what we're getting to here is that right now he's stuck and he's trying to figure out obviously we look at it, we're like, well, we have more food may be the answer. Has the answer ever been more fats?
Absolutely, absolutely, because you're getting over twice the amount of calories in the same gram or in the same volume of food. So it's much easier to increase caloric intake by adding fat than it is. I mean, it depends too. Is he struggling to get the volume of these meals down? Because if he's going to add 200 grams of carbs or 300 grams of carbs, I mean, that's a lot more volume than if he added, the equivalent calorically of fat. And if you add fat, it makes it sometimes easier to get the food down because it actually fucking tastes better. Even though it might be a chore, at least it tastes better and you can get it down.
Yeah.
So it depends where he is as far as maxing out the amount or the volume of food that he can actually not just get in his system, but process and assimilate.
I mean, if he's reacting to fats right now, well, I'd tell him probably just up the fats. I mean, you can only up the carbs and fats together so much before you run into a problem.
Right.
So I would, if he's reacting well to fats now, I would just say, hey, up the fats and go with that.
Yeah, up the protein and the fats. Leave the carbs there.
Protein and the fats,
At 800 grams.
That's a lot of carbs.
Yeah, no, he's not on that yet, I don't think, is he? I think he said he was going up to that.
I thought he said he was at 800 and he wanted to go to 1,000, but I may have misunderstood.
He said he was going to go up to 800. I think, what, as a matter of fact, what about this? I got to scroll back up to find it. He's at 600 carbs right now, and he was talking about going up to 800 on what he calls his medium day and 1,000 on his high days. I don't know how many medium days and high days he has, but I mean that's a big jump, isn't it? You think let me ask you this now. In your experience, Skip, take a guy who's what did he say? He weighs 250. How many, if you wanted to add carbs to that diet, you're thinking we got to push higher. How many carbs would you add? Does it need to be a good bump at that point? Or could you do just 50 or 25?
Well, it just depends on the changes or the adjustments he's already made that haven't worked. Like if he's been pushing, let's say he was at 350 or 400, and he's been adding 50 here and 50 there, or 50 every week or 100 every week, and it's not doing anything, then make a big jump. I mean, there comes a point where it's like, okay, fuck it. I don't want to sit here for another 4 weeks and not make progress if I'm jumping at 50 per week. Yeah. Let's just jump to 200 and we'll see. Because if you jump to 200 and you gain a bunch of weight and you don't like the look or you feel bloated and distended, you can always back off as well. So, it depends. There's variables in there. We don't know how lean he is. We don't know how well he's processing the food that he's eating. Is he gassy? Is he distended? Is he miserable when he's done with each meal? And he's having it right. And he's got, he has to choke the next meal down. Like he's like, oh my God, I got to eat in an hour. I don't know how I'm going to get this.
He said he ate it pretty easy, his food. Yeah. In a comment at the start. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the 200 grams of carb jump and then another 200 on a high day. To me, that seems a little.
Yeah, it's up
that's
there.
A pretty big.
That's a good amount.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if he hasn't made other changes though that haven't worked, that's all I'm saying.
I'd run the protein and the fat and run with that. Mm-hmm. Let's see what's up.
Yeah, or spread it out. You bump your protein, add 50, another 50 grams of carbs or something like that, and try to keep your ratios so that they're not completely, they don't start to go completely out of whack. Because if he has been progressing on similar, on the same ratios, but he's just stuck, stay with the same ratios and increase it across the board. You can always do that as well. So I don't know. There's a lot of things there. If he listens to this answer and he can come back with more information, we can come back to this, the same situation, the same question on the next show.
Worst case, take trend.
And respect too for being 250, and shooting for 1,000 calories or 1,000 carbs here. I mean, that's pretty hardcore.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
It wants to grow.
Yeah.
I got bloated listening to
that. That's a hell of a resistance band workout at home, I'm telling you.
Easy.
This is from Jake. He says fasted blood glucose has been hanging around 100 to 110 for the longest. At first, I thought it was stress-induced since going keto stress-induced since going... Oh, okay. I got you. At first, I thought it was stress-induced since going keto did nothing to help. I literally got a couple of 90 readings early on into keto, but that was short-lived, and it shot back up to my norm. I really don't feel very stressed these days.
First thing I'd ask him is what's his family history.
He also says carbs going up and down do not seem to make a difference.
Here, you know what I'm going to say this? I know that's Jake Radcliffe. I already sent him 5 pounds of protein because that's the question we used for the expert panel. It was the first question for the expert panel on intense muscle. I'm like, bruh, I already answered it, and I already sent you 5 pounds of protein. Come on now.
He also adds he's going to get blood work done.
I'm going to say Jake. I'm not going to say my last name because Skip might recognize me. But obviously, he's still dealing with the same issue, apparently. Scott's going at it the right way. Is there a history of blood, that your blood glucose levels are going to run higher? Is there GH in there? Are there things that are elevating blood glucose levels? Keto, sometimes people get turned around on keto because their blood glucose levels run higher, but that can happen when you're on keto. I know he's not on keto now, I get that, but just because you have higher blood glucose levels on keto, everybody thinks that's, oh my god, that can't happen because I'm not running any carbs. Yeah, it can happen.
What about the dawn phenomenon? You guys ever deal with that?
Who?
The dawn phenomenon.
Yeah,
sometimes you get higher
morning.
Yeah, sometimes you get higher readings in the morning, and what I've found is that you're not better off, but another thing you could do is check your postprandial reading, like 2 hours after you've eaten, and see where you're at there, because I think that gives a really good reading of like what your response is to glucose, that way. I think that's beneficial, because I know that I've seen people that they may be off in the morning and they can't figure out why, and then they go, it's like the more information you have, the more crazy you can drive yourself. It's like, I wonder if he was like this always, and I wonder how his response is during the rest of the day. I guess that would be one of my concerns too. So he said he is going to go get some lab work
in the morning, and all that's could be a problem. I mean, yeah, I think you're right. I got away from blood glucose in the morning, fasted, and went to like a post third meal or something to get a better reading.
He also said at the end, I just noticed this, he said, starting to chalk this up to the dawn phenomenon. So we could see. Let's see if we have anything else here. Let's see. We did the gyno question. What about that topic with contests, Skip?
Oh, yeah.
Let's finish up on that one. This is a good one to talk about.
Yeah, it is. I think, and I'm dealing with this with a lot of my clients, and I may or may not be dealing with this myself too. I think everybody is, especially competitors right now who are getting ready for shows. They see that, the restrictions are going to lift on the gym, for the gyms and stuff, and that's cool. I'll be able to get back in. Yeah, the shows will be on. Here's the perspective from the promoter's standpoint that understands, or you might not understand how it works. So I don't want anybody getting mad at me, but a lot of promoters are not going, they're pushing their show date a long way out, a lot of time to not reschedule that the show is going to be pushed.
I'm getting a lot of, for some reason my computer's slowing down. I know nobody's hearing this. I'm sorry to ask, Skip, because it just started cutting out like every 10 seconds. Could you start that over?
We're dealing right now with the restrictions beginning to lift in certain parts of the country. Everybody's getting excited. They can go back to the gym, and competitors who might be getting started into preps can say, okay, cool. My show is going to be on. It's hard to tell whether your shows are going to be on or not, because the promoters are smart enough to not say too early that the shows are going to be pushed. And I'll tell you, and this is why. If the competitors on the hook and keep them prepping for the shows, they need the competitors. Okay, that's the number one. Without a competitors, you don't have a show. Yeah. Second is, without the audience, they're not going to clear a profit. Yeah. They might break even with the competitors, but they're not going to put a lot of profit in their pocket. So what they're doing, not all of them, but some of them, they're keeping the competitors on the hook and not saying we're thinking about pushing. And it really doesn't come down to the promoter. It comes down to the states as to whether a crowd can assemble for the shows or any other type of, that. So what they're doing is they're keeping the competitors on the hook, and at the last minute they're pushing the shows because that keeps the competitors prepping, because they're so close. They figure, what's another stay on. Some will fall off, but most will stay on. If they announce that 2 or 3 months prior, people would bail. Competitors would be like, fuck it, I'll wait till the fall. So what they do is they keep them on the hook. They then push the show because they don't want to have the show with just the competitors if they can't have the crowds there, because it's going to cut into their profits huge.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is this. Let's say you have a show in the middle of July. Gyms are going to be open in large part across the entire country by the middle of July.
Sure.
But are you going to be able to assemble? Are you going to be able to have a crowd? Will the promoter have a crowd at that event? Your show could still be pushed, and they're not going to tell you until the last minute. Now, I'm not telling everybody. I'm just putting out information. I'm not telling everybody to put it off and wait. But Masters Nationals, they already announced, because it's a big show, that they're waiting until October. That was a July show.
Yeah.
So you have to wonder if all these other July shows are just trying to keep these people on the hook, keep the competitors on the hook, so that they can get down to the wire, and you're going to be 2 or 3 weeks out from the show and find out there's not a show and it's been pushed a couple months.
I hope that's not the case, man. I hope not.
But it's already starting to happen. Not everybody, but some promoters are doing that. And I understand from a business standpoint, I get it. But it's not very fair to the competitors. At the same time, the promoters would argue, well, I have to be able to, make my money back, and I need to be able to make a profit, because when push comes to shove, it's a business, and I understand it.
Yeah.
Just know that if you're prepping for a show now and you think you're good midsummer, there's a chance that you might not be. It's just information.
Yeah.
If I was a promoter, I'd go early and I'd make a deal with the venue saying, hey, if I don't turn X amount of tickets, participants and or crowd, then I'd get a great deal anyway going in, ask for a much reduced rate on the venue, and then I would use a ticket sales stipulation that if I don't get any more tickets than X, then you're going to cut me either a better deal or let me in for nothing. And I think the venues will risk that too, because they got to make money and they're wanting to get traffic through. So I think from somebody running a show, I try to get in early, because if you wait too long, you're going to be, especially if you're a show that's not super popular, or you're not a pro qualifier, you're going to get a piss poor turnout, because they're all going to be jammed into one short time frame.
I wonder, think those are the ones that are canceling.
I wonder though too, like, have they not paid for the venues yet? You know what I mean? Have they not signed contracts for those things?
They probably have a deposit.
Yeah.
But there's stipulations in those contracts.
Okay.
That, no one that knows what they're doing is going to go and sign a contract to a venue without an out clause. There's an out clause in all of them.
Okay.
Like, what if there's a hurricane, or whatever, Right. So there's stipulations in there. If I was a promoter, I'm sure they are. I'd be negotiating hard right now, because these venues have been empty, dude. They got to make some money, and they're going to cut deals.
Yeah.
Right. But what I'm just coming back to the point that if they can't have a crowd there, that is a huge hit to the promoter. That is probably a pretty big part of the decision whether to push that show or not.
I think, what did I hear? I heard that Victoria told me as Canada as a country is not doing any type of big mass gatherings for the rest of the year. Like, they just figured that was out. I know I haven't heard anything announced like that for the U.S., but at least for they're not. And I don't know what they call like big groups of people, but they were just saying no to that. So I don't know if they could do that here, if they plan to, but I haven't heard anything yet. But that makes a ton of sense.
They can't do it federally. They'll do it by the state. So what you might have is some states that you might have a show, and here's what I'm saying. Have a backup plan, because there may be states that may have shows, say in July, that there's not as much of a restriction on gathering of crowds or gathering of people who can be there. Those promoters are going to have those shows. Then the other, like down here where Broward and Miami are kind of hot spots for Florida, the northern panhandle of Florida might be able to have a show, or Georgia, whose restrictions have been lifted some of the earliest in the country. There may be a show in Atlanta, or there may be a show in Colorado or something. I don't know. I know Colorado's opening up their gyms this week, May 1st, May 8th. I don't know, relatively quickly. So now that doesn't mean that they're going to, that the governor is going to say that they can have crowds, large crowds. That I don't know.
Yeah.
But you would tend to think that the ones who open up sooner are going to get through their phases quicker that they have set up, usually 3 or 4 phases, and they would get to being to the point of assembling with more people in a specific area, like as an example, bars or restaurants opening up, things like that, to where you could have the show. So have a backup plan if your show is, over the summer or, July, August, that sort of thing, because obviously the gyms will be open by then in most places in the country, but may not be able to have that show if they're not able to sell tickets.
Yeah, I think by July, I don't think there's going to be an issue.
I hope not.
But you might have a reluctance in certain parts of the country for people to mass gather. But I think of the ability to have a show and have people in a venue, I think the trend now is people have lost so much money or not making any money that it's starting to be like, hey, let's just get this thing rolling.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. At the same time, I think it's easier to say that if you're not getting ready for a show and it's on the line.
Yeah.
And if it comes down to it, I'll say this, and I know this firsthand, it's a bitch to prep for a show that day in and day out, you might be locked in, but you don't know that at 2 or 3 weeks before that show, when you're ready to go, could be potentially in your best condition and it's fucking game on, and you have to wait another 10, 12 weeks.
Oh man, that'd be it for someone in that. I mean, that could be a shame, but there's never been a time that we've ever had to deal with this.
Right.
There's never been a time for bodybuilding shows where everything might get canceled. At least in my life,
not nationally, but there's been regional issues.
Yeah,
like hurricanes down here.
Yeah.
There's been it shut the world down. But
yeah,
sure.
I'll tell you this: if you want to go to a pro qualifier, I'd find the first damn pro qualifier and go to it.
I wonder what the turnouts are going to be like. Because I know I've got
that's
people
your
that are
best
still
bet.
working.
Huh?
I've got people, that are. I've had a couple people that flaked completely. They couldn't handle it anymore. They were done. They threw in the towel. But then I have people that are still grinding. They're just doing what they've got to do. They're still getting into shape. Some of them don't even have really good equipment, but they're doing what it takes.
Yeah, if you want to go to pro qualifier, I'd find the first damn one you could find and get to it. Because I think you're going to have a weaker turnout.
Well, and you also have, there's a lot going on. You also have the possibility of the second wave where who knows that things may not be shut down in the fall anyway. So if you put it off to the fall, maybe there's this small window, July and August, maybe even to early September, and then the goddamn shows get canceled again because numbers start to go up. There's a lot of unknowns.
Stop the rumors.
There's just a lot of potential possibilities. So the other thing is, I don't want to hear, and I'm going to go on record as saying this, I don't want to hear anybody say to anybody who competes that did well at a show, if there was a low turnout, because I'm going to say this, and I'm going to speak for my clients first, your client, Scott, too, and Scott, if you have any, if you went through this bullshit and all the stress that's going on, and you stayed locked in, and you continue to train, busting your fucking ass with your diet and everything else on top of everything else that is going on and all the unknowns, you get to show up to that show and kick everybody's ass.
Whew. Yeah.
You get to, because that's only fair because you fucking stuck it out.
Yeah.
You stayed with it. You did what a lot of other people flaked on or decided not to do, going, oh, I'll do it later. And there's nothing wrong with doing it later. But all I'm saying is there's damn sure nothing wrong with showing up in a weak field and kicking everybody's ass if you did everything you were supposed to do to be there.
That's a good point, man. That's a really good point. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Really, Scott?
Hey, I got a guy that's going to show up to whatever pro qualifier comes first, and he's going to win.
Yeah, well, hey, like I said, I'm not going to stand out here because I said it earlier. I said it about a month ago. There's going to be some pros who are going to turn pro, and they're going to be weaker pros. But you know what? You fucking stuck it out. You showed up, and anybody else could have showed up too, but they decided not to. So good on him.
Right on. Well, that's all we got, guys. What do you say we get out of here? We've got go over to I'll put the link in the description for Team Skip. You guys can head on over there. Check out the stuff about stretching. Of course, go to our sponsor, TrueNutrition.com. Use our code ADVICES. Help support our programming. And that's it, guys, for another episode of Blood, Sweat, and Gear with Skip Hill and S2H. I'm Scott McNally. We'll see you next time.
Out.